Thank you for joining. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about some special pills. Yeah. So some time ago, I was at work and we had this patient who we assumed would be passing away soon because we ended up discovering her potential cancer very late. So she came into the hospital because she was having pain. They did a series of imaging tests and of course they saw a mass. They saw a breast mass. Now, in a lot of these cases, sometimes it's a cyst, sometimes it's dense tissue, sometimes it's a series of other things that do not amount to breast cancer. Sometimes they need to go ahead and remove it before it turns into breast cancer. In her case, this was my first time taking care of her. And the nurses before me, the report that I received was that
she'd been lethargic, her blood sugar was low, blood pressure, was low, and she wasn't being super responsive. There would be moments of clarity and then she'd sort of go right back out.
So the doctor was assuming that it was cancer. Obviously they were going to do a biopsy. And they are also assuming that it had metastasized, meaning it had spread to other organs. None of this was confirmed. It was all just speculation. And this is what healthcare professionals do until they get the results back. And then they sort of, depending on how serious it may be, they'll treat you as if the test results came back positive, just as a precautionary. So I go in and I introduce myself, and a lot of what everybody else was saying was confirmed. She was lethargic. Lethargic meaning she's not super responsive. She just looks overly drowsy, just sort of like drooping in and out. I was like, dang. And the thing is, she was young. She was only 47. Let's think of a name for her. I can show you the one. Jasmine. We'll call her Jasmine. So Jasmine, as I was saying, had frequent moments of lethargic behavior and not super responsive. And I just kind of thought that the whole situation was sad. And she did have occasional family members visit, but in her chart, the history stated that the majority of her family was in another country. So it was really difficult for everybody to come out there and, you know, come say their goodbyes. But she did have a select few kind of scattered family members throughout the US. And so we were able to get in touch with a cousin and maybe, I don't know, another family member. I don't even remember. So at one point, there was one of those family members at the bedside and she was being attentive. She was helping with, you know, keeping her comfortable, checking to see if she needed anything when she was being responsive. And even when she was responsive, it wasn't like conversations that you and I would have with one another, you know? So I would say maybe about 4 or 5 hours into the shift, I'd been dealing with pretty much the same behavior. The really droopy kind of lack of presentness and awareness throughout the shift, throughout those first 4 or 5 hours.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
The family member was there for maybe about 3 hours and had stepped out, and she said that the other family would be in a little bit later. So I went in there and she seemed a little bit more perky.
What's going on, sweetheart?
Boy, you me up with that driving.
Oh yeah? What you know right there?
I thought it was a gunshot. With the way you hit that phone.
Hey, look.
I was like, oh, well, that's nice. That's a pleasant surprise. So I tried to engage in a little bit more conversation with her, see if she could tell me if she knows who she is, if she knows where she is, if she knows what the circumstances. This is how we assess whether or not our patients are alert and oriented. So she answered all of those questions correctly, you know? And again, I was a little bit surprised because in a lot of these cases, whenever you end up finding out about a situation that's too late and the patient typically like progresses really quickly to death, it's not common for them to be, when they have their moments of clarity, for them to be this clear. And not only that, but it kind of seemed like it happened a little overnight where not even overnight because it was happening during the same shift, but just over the first 4 or 5 hours, as I was saying, she was really lethargic, not responsive, and her behavior was very consistent with the report that the nurse was giving and what was being stated in the chart. So all of a sudden she's up and she's a little bit more perky. And so I asked her, since she was able to show me that she was with it, I said, are you in any pain? Like, talk to me about how you're feeling. And she was like,
yes, actually, I am in pain.
and so I pull up the chart and I'm getting ready to just go ahead and start documenting everything that's taking place. I wanted to get in touch with the doctor, let him know the change in status, yada, 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 yada. And as I'm pulling everything up, seeing what she has ordered PRN, meaning just as needed for pain, I'm turning back around to ask her, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate your pain? And she was like, let's just call it a 10, as she pulls a bottle of pills out her purse. Let me just say that one more time. So I was turning around to assess the level of pain that she was experiencing. Amen? Amen. And she was pulling a bottle of pills out of her purse. Now, the bed and the computer, they're not that far away from one another. And I was able to see that she was pulling out Norco. Now, I know that it's one thing for the bottle to say Norco, but it's another thing for us to figure out what's inside of the bottle that says Norco. So I was like, what's that? What's that, babe? What's that, Sugar Plum? What you got? What you got? She was like,
Oh, these are my pain pills and my relaxation pills.
Your what? Your what? Baby girl, how long you had this here? She was like,
Oh, I take this on a consistent. It just keeps me nice and mellow, real disconnected.
I bet. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about the 2 pills that are in that 1 bottle?
And she was like, I can't remember the name of the other one. I think it's like Pazolan, Pam.
I said lorazepam. Lorazepam. That medication is typically given for anxiety. And depending on the dose that you are taking, it can really knock you out. It could act as a sedative, sedate you, put you to sleep. Night, night. Yeah. Let me focus. So I was like, and how often do you take the lorazepam? And what's the other one? She was like, oh, it's Norco. Okay, so at least one of them is right. One of them. So she confirms that the other pill is Norco. And she was like,
I don't know, I just kind of take it whenever I feel like it.
how long you been doing this for? And she was like,
Oh, baby, I've had this for years.
At this point, I just feel like the questions that I'm asking, it's not really giving me accurate information. The main thing here is that she's been sedating herself. She's been knocking herself out, and she's very happy about it. So now I'm feeling like the assessment that I've gotten from the nurse and the notes that are in the chart and the report, homegirl may not be on her way out of this world just yet. She might just have been sedated at her own hands. So I was like, did you tell anybody that you had these pills? Like, a lot of times when you're, not even a lot of times, it's protocol. When you're being admitted, you're supposed to tell the nurse, these are the pills that I got. You're supposed to get approval from the pharmacy, the doctor, to be able to be given those medications while you're in the hospital. She ain't tell nobody. I know she didn't tell anybody. And she was like,
I don't remember.
I bet you don't remember. You were knocked out. So I already knew that me trying to take the pills from her would lead to a fight. I just knew, because she said she'd had them for years, and I just felt in my heart of hearts and soul of souls that me saying, okay, give me the pills, would lead to a fight. I attempted anyways, just so that I can document attempted to confiscate medication, you know, self-medicating patient, and patient refused, of course I said, you may have to give me those pills so that we can get approval from the pharmacy for us to give them to you. And she was like,
Oh no, babe. Oh no, I've been just fine for these past 12 years.
oh, 12 years. Now we've got an answer.
Taking these pills by myself, I'm fine. I'm okay.
I'm like, do you even know why you're here? Like, you just been knocked out. We've been trying to figure out why you're here. Nobody knew that you over here just medicating yourself. What? So she was like,
Yeah, the thing that they saw in my boob, in my breast, she was like, I got a long history of cysts. I just thought that was just coming in here to get that removed.
bitch, what? You mean to tell me that the entire team of disciplinary healthcare professionals, the disciplines, the healthcare disciplines, that's what I meant to say. We've all been under the impression that you might be dying and that cyst was cancer and that it had spread to other parts and that your organs were failing and that's why you were so lethargic. But here we have, you've been taking drugs whenever you feel like it, under everybody's nose for the past 3-4 days. And you just happen to what? Miss a dose and wake up a little bit more? Whew. So I called the doctor, told the doctor. The doctor, of course, the covering doctor, came to the bedside. And then, of course, we had an oncologist on the case because we were assuming that she had cancer. An oncologist is somebody that studies cancer cells and deals with cancer patients. You know, obviously the covering doctor, the attending doctor, and the oncologist, they were communicating with one another, and I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I did hear the doctor getting frustrated. He was like,
This isn't something that you pass up. This isn't information that you can just forget to tell us. We have to know that you take these medications. We have to know what is in your history. We have to know why you take this medication. We didn't even know that you had a history of anxiety.
I didn't know what the worst part of this situation was. But I mean, obviously we would have discovered that it wasn't cancer. We would have discovered that it was a cyst. But if she didn't wake up a little bit, then we would have all been confused as to why she was so lethargic. So she did go ahead and have the procedure to have the cyst removed. But it was a whole debacle to try to get the medication like away from the patient. Like, he really had to tell her, like,
While you are in the hospital, you cannot just take these meds on your own just as you very well please. If you do not allow us to take the meds and put you on a regimen, a PRN regimen, and a certain hour scheduled time frame, then we have to have somebody sit in the room with you and watch you. A sitter.
she didn't like that. That was it. That was all she needed. Like, my independence might be So that's when she handed over the drugs. We did the procedure. But now she does have a psychiatrist that was appointed to her by the hospital. Yeah. So that was an interesting experience. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. On another note, go get my book. Hold on, just pause for 1 second. And just to finish it off, there is something called Kindle Vella. I'm gonna leave the link down below. So I'm starting this story. It's episodic, all right? So far I got 4 episodes where I'm talking about this dynamic, this sort of developing love triangle amongst a patient, a therapist, and someone that she recently met at that therapist's office. Go take a look at it, go read it, and go tell me if that's something that you guys want me to start telling here on StoryTime, Ashley's StoryTime, my YouTube. Thank you. Have a good one.